Question 1. The performance metrics show a significant improvement in document processing speed after the initial deployment of IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1. But there are also an increasing number of exceptions flagged by the system that require manual review. From a stakeholder perspective, what is the most appropriate next step to ensure both system efficiency and data integrity? Option A. Prioritize further performance tuning to maximize throughput, assuming that the exception handling process is sufficient to catch any data inaccuracies. Option B. Focus on user training to improve their efficiency in handling exceptions, as this will mitigate the impact of the increased exception rate on overall processing time. Option C. Halt further deployment and initiate a comprehensive review of the OCR and validation rules, involving business users and compliance officers to understand the root cause of the exceptions before proceeding. Option D. Immediately address the increased exception rate by refining the OCR and validation rules to reduce manual intervention, while continuing to monitor processing speed and data accuracy. Correct answer is D. Immediately address the increased exception rate by refining the OCR and validation rules to reduce manual intervention, while continuing to monitor processing speed and data accuracy. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for system stability and user adoption with the long-term strategic goals of data integrity and compliance, all within the context of an IBM Datacap Taskmaster V8. 1. Implementation. The pressure to deliver a functional system quickly can lead to overlooking critical validation steps, which can have significant downstream consequences for regulatory adherence and business operations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that performance improvements do not compromise the accuracy and completeness of captured data, which is paramount in regulated environments. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a phased rollout and thorough validation, directly addressing the core principles of responsible system implementation and data governance. By involving stakeholders in the validation process and ensuring that performance metrics are tied to data quality and compliance, the implementation team demonstrates a commitment to delivering a robust and trustworthy solution. This aligns with the implicit regulatory expectation of due diligence in system design and deployment, ensuring that data captured by the system is reliable and auditable. The focus on user feedback and iterative improvement, while maintaining a strong emphasis on data integrity, fosters user confidence and reduces the risk of compliance breaches. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate performance gains without adequate data validation would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such an approach could lead to the acceptance of inaccurate or incomplete data, which in a regulated industry could result in non-compliance with data retention, accuracy, or reporting requirements. This could trigger audits, fines, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that bypasses stakeholder validation to expedite deployment risks alienating users and creating a system that does not meet business needs, potentially leading to workarounds that further compromise data integrity and compliance. Ethically, this demonstrates a lack of consideration for the end users and the business impact of the system. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining project objectives, including both performance and compliance requirements. This should be followed by a risk assessment that identifies potential data integrity and regulatory issues. A phased implementation plan with clearly defined validation checkpoints involving all relevant stakeholders is crucial. Continuous monitoring of performance metrics, with a specific focus on data quality and compliance indicators, should be integrated throughout the project lifecycle. Finally, a robust change management process should be in place to address any issues identified during validation or monitoring, ensuring that all modifications are documented and approved. Question 2. The audit findings indicate a potential over-provisioning of user access rights within the IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1 environment, leading to concerns about data integrity and compliance with data handling regulations. Which of the following actions is the most appropriate response to mitigate this risk? Option A. Grant all users administrative privileges to ensure they have the necessary access for all tasks, thereby streamlining operations and avoiding potential access bottlenecks. Option B. Implement a granular, role-based access control system that assigns permissions based on specific job functions and responsibilities within the Taskmaster application. Option C. Document the audit finding and defer any remediation efforts until a future system upgrade, assuming no immediate negative impact on data security or compliance. Option D. Disable all security features and access controls within Taskmaster to maximize processing speed and eliminate any potential user access restrictions. Correct answer is B. Implement a granular role-based access control system that assigns permissions based on specific job functions and responsibilities within the Taskmaster application. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for data processing with the long-term implications of data integrity and regulatory compliance. The audit findings highlight a potential gap in how user access is managed, which can have significant consequences for data security and auditability within an IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1. Implementation. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any remediation efforts do not compromise existing workflows or introduce new vulnerabilities. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the audit finding by implementing a robust, role-based access control mechanism. This aligns with the principle of least privilege, a fundamental security concept that minimizes the risk of unauthorized access and data modification. By assigning specific permissions based on job functions, the system ensures that users only have access to the data and functionalities necessary for their roles. This approach is crucial for maintaining data integrity, supporting audit trails, and complying with data protection regulations that mandate secure data handling and access controls. In the context of IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8, 1. This translates to configuring user groups and assigning appropriate permissions within the application's security settings, ensuring that only authorized personnel can perform critical operations like data entry, validation, and export. An incorrect approach that involves granting broad administrative privileges to all users is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This violates the principle of least privilege and creates an environment ripe for accidental or intentional data corruption, unauthorized access, and potential breaches of sensitive information. Such a practice would likely contravene data protection regulations that require organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. Furthermore, it undermines the auditability of the system, making it difficult to trace actions back to specific individuals and increasing the risk of non-compliance. Another incorrect approach, such as disabling all security features to expedite processing, is also a severe regulatory and ethical failure. This completely disregards the need for data security and integrity, exposing the system and its data to significant risks. It directly violates the spirit and letter of data protection laws that mandate secure processing and storage of information. This approach would render the system untrustworthy for any regulated industry and would likely result in severe penalties during any subsequent audit or regulatory review. A third incorrect approach, which is to ignore the audit finding and assume no immediate impact, represents a failure in professional responsibility and risk management. This passive stance allows potential vulnerabilities to persist, increasing the likelihood of a security incident or compliance violation. It demonstrates a lack of proactive engagement with security and compliance requirements, which is ethically questionable and professionally negligent. Organizations have a duty to address identified risks, especially those highlighted by audits, to maintain the integrity of their operations and protect sensitive data. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the audit finding, its potential impact on data security and compliance, and the specific capabilities of the IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1 system. This includes 1. Assessing the severity of the finding and its immediate risks. 2. Identifying the most effective and compliant solution within the system's architecture. 3. Consulting with relevant stakeholders, including IT security, compliance officers, and business users, to ensure the solution meets all requirements. 4. Implementing the chosen solution with proper testing and validation. And 5. Documenting the changes and updating relevant policies and procedures. Question 3. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a comprehensive, high-level validation rule for every single data field within the IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. One solution would significantly increase development time and processing overhead. Considering the business need for accurate data extraction and the potential for varying data quality across different document types. Which approach to validation strategy best aligns with efficient and effective implementation? Option A. Implement a tiered validation strategy, applying the most stringent validation rules to data fields deemed critical for downstream business processes and regulatory compliance, while using more lenient rules for less critical fields. Option B. Mandate identical, high-level validation rules for all data fields to ensure a uniform standard of accuracy across the entire system. Option C. Prioritize rapid implementation by applying only the most basic, essential validation rules to all data fields, accepting a higher potential for downstream data errors. Option D. Develop complex, custom validation rules for every individual data field, irrespective of its business criticality, to ensure exhaustive data verification. The correct answer is A. Implement a tiered validation strategy, applying the most stringent validation rules to data fields deemed critical for downstream business processes and regulatory compliance, while using more lenient rules for less critical fields. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in IBM Datacap Taskmaster V8. 1. Implementations. Balancing the desire for comprehensive data validation with the practicalities of project timelines and resource constraints. The core of the challenge lies in determining the appropriate level of validation for specific data fields, especially when dealing with a large volume of documents and varying data quality. A one-size-fits-all approach to validation can lead to either an overly complex and slow system, or one that fails to meet business requirements for data accuracy. Careful judgment is required to identify critical data elements that necessitate stringent validation versus those where a more lenient approach is acceptable without compromising business outcomes. The correct approach, which prioritizes validation based on the criticality of the data field to downstream business processes and regulatory compliance, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principle of risk management inherent in any system implementation. By focusing validation efforts on high-impact fields, the implementation team ensures that the most crucial data is accurate, thereby minimizing the risk of errors in critical business decisions or regulatory reporting. This approach is efficient, cost-effective, and directly addresses the core purpose of the capture system: to reliably extract and process essential information. It also implicitly supports compliance by ensuring that data subject to specific regulatory requirements is handled with the necessary rigor. An incorrect approach that mandates identical high-level validation for all fields, regardless of their importance, is professionally unacceptable. This leads to wasted development time, increased system processing overhead, and potentially slower throughput, without a commensurate increase in overall data accuracy for critical functions. It fails to demonstrate an understanding of business priorities and efficient resource allocation. Another incorrect approach, which advocates for minimal validation across the board to speed up implementation, is also professionally flawed. This approach significantly increases the risk of inaccurate data propagating through business processes, leading to potential financial losses, reputational damage, and non-compliance with industry-specific regulations or data governance policies. It prioritizes speed over accuracy and reliability, which is a fundamental failure in a data capture system. A third incorrect approach, which suggests implementing complex, custom validation rules for every single field without a clear business justification, is also problematic. While it might seem thorough, it often results in an overly complicated and difficult-to-maintain system. Without a clear link to business criticality or regulatory requirements, these custom rules can become technical debt, increasing the cost of future system modifications and troubleshooting. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured analysis of data field criticality. This begins with understanding the business processes that consume the extracted data. Key questions to ask include: what are the consequences of an error in this field? Does this field directly impact financial reporting, customer transactions, or regulatory compliance? And what is the acceptable error rate for this data element? This analysis should be conducted in close collaboration with business stakeholders to ensure alignment. Once criticality is established, validation rules can be designed and implemented proportionally, with the most stringent rules applied to the most critical fields. This iterative, risk-based approach ensures that the Datacap Taskmaster V8 One implementation delivers maximum business value while adhering to necessary accuracy and compliance standards. Question 4. Which approach would be most appropriate for implementing IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8? 1. To process a high volume of sensitive financial documents, ensuring both processing efficiency and strict adherence to financial data integrity regulations. Option A. Design a workflow that includes automated data extraction, robust exception handling for low-confidence fields, and a mandatory human verification step for all critical financial data points before final commitment. Option B. Prioritize the fastest possible processing speed by disabling most validation rules and exception handling, assuming downstream systems will catch any significant errors. Option C. Implement a fully automated extraction process with minimal human intervention, relying solely on Datacap's confidence scores to flag potential errors for later review. Option D. Focus on extracting as much data as possible in the initial pass, with a plan to manually re-enter any missing or incorrect information only if specifically requested by auditors. The correct answer is C. Implement a fully automated extraction process with minimal human intervention, relying solely on Datacap's confidence scores to flag potential errors for later review. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in implementing document processing solutions, ensuring data integrity and compliance within a regulated industry. The core difficulty lies in balancing the efficiency gains of automated data extraction with the absolute requirement for accuracy and auditability, especially when dealing with sensitive financial documents. The chosen approach must not only meet technical requirements, but also adhere to strict regulatory frameworks governing financial data handling and record keeping. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a multi-layered validation strategy. This involves leveraging Datacap's built-in verification features, implementing robust exception handling workflows, and crucially, incorporating a human review step for critical data fields. This aligns with regulatory expectations for data accuracy and completeness, ensuring that any discrepancies are identified and rectified before data is committed to downstream systems. The emphasis on audit trails within Datacap further supports compliance by providing a traceable history of data processing and any manual interventions, which is a cornerstone of regulatory adherence in financial services. An incorrect approach that relies solely on automated validation without human oversight fails to account for the inherent limitations of OCR and data extraction algorithms. This can lead to the propagation of errors, resulting in inaccurate financial records. Such an approach would likely violate regulations requiring accurate financial reporting and could expose the organization to significant compliance risks and penalties. Another incorrect approach that bypasses the exception handling workflow and directly commits all extracted data, regardless of confidence scores, is equally problematic. This disregards the system's ability to flag potential issues and bypasses the opportunity for correction. This directly contravenes the principle of due diligence in data processing and would be viewed as a failure to implement adequate controls, leading to noncompliance with data integrity standards. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on speed of processing without adequate validation or exception management would be a critical failure. While efficiency is a goal, it cannot come at the expense of accuracy and compliance in a regulated environment. This would demonstrate a lack of understanding of the professional responsibilities associated with handling sensitive financial data and would likely result in significant regulatory breaches. The professional decision-making process for such situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, understanding the specific regulatory requirements of the financial industry, and designing a solution that incorporates appropriate controls at each stage of the document processing lifecycle. This includes defining clear validation rules, establishing effective exception handling procedures, and ensuring that human intervention is strategically applied, where it provides the most value in ensuring data accuracy and compliance. Question 5. The review process indicates that the IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8 one implementation has encountered a significant number of processing exceptions, leading to delays in data availability and potential data integrity concerns. Which of the following strategies best addresses this situation while adhering to best practices for data capture and regulatory compliance? Option A. Archive all documents that generate exceptions without further investigation to maintain processing throughput. Option B. Advise users to manually review and correct all exceptions as they arise, without establishing a formal process or tracking mechanism. Option C. Focus solely on optimizing the initial document recognition and classification stages, assuming that exceptions will naturally decrease with system tuning. Option D. Implement a comprehensive exception management workflow that includes automated alerts for critical errors, defined roles and responsibilities for exception handlers, and clear service-level agreements for resolution times. The correct answer is D. Implement a comprehensive exception management workflow that includes automated alerts for critical errors, defined roles and responsibilities for exception handlers, and clear service-level agreements for resolution times. Explanation: the review process indicates a need to evaluate the implementation of IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1. Specifically concerning the best practices for handling exceptions and errors during document processing. This scenario is professionally challenging because effective exception management directly impacts data integrity, operational efficiency, and compliance with regulatory requirements for record retention and accuracy. A robust exception handling strategy ensures that critical data is not lost or corrupted, and that processes can be audited effectively. The correct approach involves establishing a clear, documented workflow for identifying, categorizing, and resolving exceptions. This includes defining roles and responsibilities for exception handlers, setting service-level agreements, SLAs, for resolution times, and implementing automated alerts for critical errors. This approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of data governance and operational excellence. It ensures that the system's output is reliable and auditable, which is crucial for meeting regulatory obligations. By proactively managing exceptions, organizations minimize the risk of non-compliance and maintain the integrity of their captured data. An incorrect approach would be to ignore or minimally address exceptions, assuming they are infrequent or inconsequential. This failure to establish a systematic exception handling process is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It can lead to the acceptance of inaccurate or incomplete data, violating regulations that mandate data accuracy and completeness. Furthermore, it undermines the auditability of the capture process, as unaddressed exceptions create gaps in the record. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on manual intervention without any defined procedures or escalation paths. This leads to inconsistent resolution, delays, and potential data loss, again failing to meet regulatory standards for data integrity and timely processing. A third incorrect approach is to implement overly complex or inaccessible exception resolution tools without adequate training for the personnel responsible. This can result in further errors and delays, demonstrating a lack of due diligence in system implementation and user support, which can have compliance implications. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the specific regulatory landscape governing the data being processed. This involves identifying all applicable laws and guidelines related to data accuracy, retention, and auditability. Next, they should analyze the potential impact of different types of exceptions on business operations and compliance. This analysis should inform the design of an exception handling workflow that is both efficient and compliant. The decision-making process should prioritize the establishment of clear, documented procedures, adequate training for personnel, and robust monitoring mechanisms to ensure continuous improvement and adherence to regulatory standards. Question 6. The analysis reveals that a critical aspect of implementing IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1 involves managing the lifecycle of processing logs to ensure both operational efficiency and regulatory adherence. Considering the potential for extensive log generation during batch processing, what is the most prudent approach to log management that balances auditability, troubleshooting capabilities, and resource utilization within a regulated environment? Option A. Establish a uniform short retention period for all types of processing logs, regardless of their criticality or the specific regulatory requirements for different data types. Option B. Retain all processing logs indefinitely at their most granular level to ensure complete historical data is always available for any potential future need. Option C. Purge all intermediate processing logs immediately after batch completion to minimize storage requirements and maximize system performance. Option D. Implement a tiered retention policy for logs, retaining detailed logs for a defined period to satisfy audit and troubleshooting needs, and then aggregating or summarizing less critical logs for longer-term historical reference. The correct answer is D. Implement a tiered retention policy for logs, retaining detailed logs for a defined period to satisfy audit and troubleshooting needs, and then aggregating or summarizing less critical logs for longer-term historical reference. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in implementing document capture solutions like IBM Datacap Taskmaster V8. 1. Balancing the need for efficient data extraction with the imperative to maintain data integrity and comply with regulatory requirements for audit trails and data retention. The challenge lies in determining the appropriate level of detail and retention for intermediate processing logs, which can consume significant storage and impact performance if not managed judiciously. Overly aggressive log purging risks noncompliance and hinders troubleshooting, while excessive logging can lead to performance degradation and increased infrastructure costs. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves establishing a tiered logging strategy aligned with regulatory mandates and business needs. This means retaining detailed logs for a defined period, sufficient to satisfy audit requirements and enable effective troubleshooting of critical errors. Beyond this period, logs can be aggregated or summarized to a less granular level, retaining essential metadata for compliance and historical analysis without the overhead of full detail. This approach ensures that all regulatory obligations are met, such as those potentially related to data privacy, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the jurisdiction, though for this exam we focus solely on U.S. regulations, financial record-keeping, e.g., SOX, or industry-specific compliance frameworks. It also allows for efficient system monitoring and problem resolution. The decision on retention periods should be informed by a risk assessment, considering the sensitivity of the data processed, the potential impact of data loss or corruption, and specific legal or regulatory retention schedules. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to retain all processing logs indefinitely at their most granular level. This is professionally unacceptable because it incurs unnecessary storage costs, can significantly degrade system performance over time, and may even introduce security risks by holding sensitive operational data longer than required. From a regulatory perspective, while seemingly comprehensive, it can be argued as inefficient and potentially non-compliant with data minimization principles if not justified by a clear business or regulatory need. Another incorrect approach is to purge all intermediate processing logs immediately after a batch is completed, regardless of any potential issues or audit requirements. This is a critical regulatory and ethical failure. It directly violates the principle of maintaining an auditable trail, which is fundamental to many compliance frameworks. If an error occurs downstream or an audit is initiated, the inability to reconstruct the processing steps and data transformations would render the system non-compliant and untrustworthy. This approach demonstrates a lack of understanding of the importance of data lineage and accountability in regulated environments. A third incorrect approach is to implement a fixed, short retention period for all logs without considering the varying criticality of different processing stages or the specific requirements of different data types. This is also professionally unsound, as it fails to account for the nuanced needs of compliance and operational support. Some logs might be critical for a longer duration due to their direct impact on financial reporting or legal obligations, while others might be less critical. A one-size-fits-all approach is often insufficient for robust compliance and effective system management. Professional reasoning. Professionals implementing IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. One must adopt a risk-based and compliance-driven approach to log management. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying all applicable regulatory and legal requirements for data retention and audit trails relevant to the specific industry and jurisdiction. 2. Conducting a thorough assessment of the data being processed and the criticality of each processing stage. 3. Defining a tiered logging strategy that specifies different retention periods and levels of detail for various log types. 4. Documenting the rationale behind these decisions, ensuring they are justifiable from a compliance and business continuity perspective. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating the logging strategy as regulations evolve or business requirements change. This systematic approach ensures that the implementation not only meets technical objectives, but also upholds legal, ethical, and professional standards. Question 7. Market research demonstrates that clients often request new functionalities during the implementation phase of complex systems like IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1. If a client requests a significant new feature that was not part of the original scope and claims it is critical for their immediate operational needs, what is the most professional and responsible course of action for the implementation team? Option A. Immediately assess the feasibility and impact of the requested feature, document the proposed changes to scope, timeline, and budget, and present this to the client for formal approval before proceeding with implementation. Option B. Politely decline the request, explaining that the project is strictly adhering to the original scope and that any new features would need to be considered for a future phase or separate project. Option C. Agree to implement the feature immediately to ensure client satisfaction, assuming that the impact on the overall project timeline and budget will be minimal and can be absorbed. Option D. Implement the requested feature as a quick fix to satisfy the client's immediate need, with the understanding that it will be formally documented and tested after the initial deployment. Correct answer is A. Immediately assess the feasibility and impact of the requested feature, document the proposed changes to scope, timeline, and budget, and present this to the client for formal approval before proceeding with implementation. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IBM Datacap Taskmaster V8 on implementations where a client's perceived urgent need for feature conflicts with the established project scope and the potential for introducing instability or scope creep. The professional challenge lies in balancing client satisfaction with project integrity, adherence to the agreed-upon implementation plan, and responsible resource allocation. The decision-making process requires careful consideration of the impact on the project timeline, budget, and the overall success of the Datacap deployment. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured and documented change management process. This aligns with standard project management methodologies and ensures that any deviation from the original plan is thoroughly evaluated for its impact. By engaging in a formal review, assessing feasibility, and obtaining explicit client approval for scope changes, the implementation team upholds transparency, accountability, and responsible project governance. This process minimizes risks associated with unmanaged changes, such as budget overruns, missed deadlines, and a compromised final solution. It also ensures that the client fully understands the implications of their request before committing to it. An incorrect approach that immediately agrees to implement the feature without a formal review fails to adhere to sound project management principles. This can lead to uncontrolled scope creep, where the project expands beyond its original objectives, potentially jeopardizing the timeline and budget. It also bypasses necessary risk assessment, potentially introducing unforeseen technical issues or impacting the stability of the existing Datacap configuration. Ethically, it can set a precedent for informal requests, undermining the established project governance, and potentially leading to client dissatisfaction if the unmanaged change causes problems. Another incorrect approach, to dismiss the request outright without proper evaluation, demonstrates a lack of client engagement and flexibility. While maintaining scope is important, a complete refusal without understanding the client's business drivers can damage the client relationship. It fails to explore potential solutions or compromises that might satisfy the client's underlying need without derailing the project. This approach can be perceived as uncooperative and may lead to the client seeking alternative solutions outside of the current engagement, impacting future business opportunities. A third incorrect approach, to implement the feature as a quick fix without proper testing or documentation, is highly unprofessional and risky. This bypasses critical quality assurance steps, increasing the likelihood of introducing bugs or performance issues into the Datacap system. It also creates technical debt, making future maintenance and upgrades more difficult and costly. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, delivering an untested and undocumented solution is a failure of due diligence and can expose both the implementation partner and the client to significant risks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear framework. 1. Understand the request, fully comprehend the client's need and the business justification behind it. 2. Assess impact. Evaluate the technical feasibility, timeline, budget, and risk implications of the request. 3. Propose solutions. If feasible, outline potential approaches, including the impact of incorporating the change into the existing scope or suggesting it as a future enhancement. 4. Formalize changes. If the decision is to proceed with the change, initiate a formal change request process, including scope, cost, and timeline adjustments, and secure written client approval. 5. Document everything. Maintain thorough documentation of all requests, evaluations, decisions, and implemented changes. Question 8. Stakeholder feedback indicates a strong desire to expedite the deployment of new document types within IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1. To improve user efficiency, even if it means temporarily deferring some of the more complex validation rules and security enhancements. The project manager is considering a streamlined deployment path that prioritizes getting the new document types live quickly, with a plan to address the deferred items in a subsequent phase. Option A. Proceed with the expedited deployment of new document types, bypassing the standard change control and testing procedures to meet the aggressive timeline and address compliance concerns post-deployment. Option B. Prioritize the user interface changes for the new document types and deploy them with minimal validation, relying on manual review to catch errors, and address full validation in a future update. Option C. Deploy the new document types with only the essential validation rules, deferring the more complex ones and advanced security features to a later release to meet the immediate stakeholder demand for speed. Option D. Implement the new document types with all required validation rules and security enhancements, even if it delays the initial go-live, and communicate the rationale for the phased approach to stakeholders. The correct answer is D. Implement the new document types with all required validation rules and security enhancements, even if it delays the initial go-live, and communicate the rationale for the phased approach to stakeholders. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT implementation projects, balancing the desire for immediate, visible improvements with the need for robust, compliant, and scalable solutions. The challenge lies in the pressure to deliver quickly, potentially leading to shortcuts that could compromise data integrity, security, or regulatory adherence, which are paramount in financial data processing. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough, phased implementation that includes rigorous testing and validation against established regulatory requirements. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that the Datacap Taskmaster solution not only meets functional needs, but also adheres to the strict data handling and privacy regulations applicable to financial institutions. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of costly remediation, reputational damage, and regulatory penalties. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the user interface improvements without addressing the underlying data capture and validation logic would fail to meet regulatory obligations. This could lead to inaccurate data being processed, which is a direct violation of financial data integrity regulations. Another incorrect approach that bypasses standard change management and testing protocols to expedite deployment introduces significant risks of system instability and security vulnerabilities, contravening IT governance frameworks and data protection laws. Finally, an approach that ignores the feedback from the compliance team, deeming their concerns as mere bureaucratic hurdles, demonstrates a critical failure in ethical and professional responsibility, as compliance is not optional but a fundamental requirement for operating within the financial sector. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that involves identifying all stakeholders and their concerns, thoroughly understanding the regulatory landscape, evaluating potential solutions against both functional and compliance requirements, conducting risk assessments for each option, and prioritizing solutions that offer the best balance of efficiency, effectiveness, and regulatory adherence. This framework ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational and legal obligations. Question 9. During the evaluation of an IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8, one implementation for a financial services client, a scenario arises where the system encounters a low confidence score on a specific data field during OCR processing. The client's primary concern is to maintain the highest possible data accuracy for regulatory reporting, while also optimizing processing throughput. Which of the following approaches best addresses these competing priorities within the context of the Taskmaster V8? 1. Framework. Option A. Design the system to ignore fields with low confidence scores, allowing them to remain blank in the final output to avoid introducing potentially incorrect data. Option B. Configure the system to automatically assign a default value to the field when a low confidence score is detected, allowing the document to proceed without manual intervention. Option C. Adjust the OCR recognition settings to a lower threshold to ensure all fields are populated, even if the accuracy is compromised, to maximize throughput. Option D. Implement a rule that routes documents with low confidence scores on critical fields to a dedicated exception review station for manual verification before further processing. The correct answer is B. Configure the system to automatically assign a default value to the field when a low confidence score is detected, allowing the document to proceed without manual intervention. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing the need for efficient data capture with the regulatory requirements for data integrity and auditability within the context of IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1. The core difficulty lies in selecting an appropriate method for handling exceptions that ensures compliance without unduly hindering the automated processing workflow. The correct approach involves implementing a robust exception handling strategy that prioritizes data accuracy and provides clear audit trails. This aligns with general data processing best practices and the implicit regulatory expectation of maintaining accurate records. By routing exceptions to a dedicated review station, the system ensures that human oversight is applied to potentially problematic data, minimizing the risk of incorrect information being committed. This also facilitates the identification of systemic issues within the OCR or recognition engines, allowing for continuous improvement of the capture process. The audit trail generated by this process is crucial for demonstrating compliance with any data governance or record-keeping regulations that might apply, even if not explicitly detailed in the exam syllabus's limited scope. An incorrect approach would be to simply discard or ignore exceptions. This is professionally unacceptable because it directly violates the principle of data integrity. Discarding exceptions means that potentially critical information is lost, leading to incomplete or inaccurate records. This could have severe regulatory consequences, especially in industries with strict data retention and accuracy mandates. Furthermore, it undermines the purpose of an automated capture system, which is to reliably extract and process information. Another incorrect approach would be to automatically assign a default value to all exceptions without human review. While this might seem efficient, it introduces a high risk of data corruption. Default values are unlikely to be accurate for all exception scenarios, leading to the introduction of false information into the system. This is a direct contravention of data accuracy requirements and would likely fail any audit. It also masks underlying problems with the capture process, preventing necessary adjustments. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to bypass the exception handling altogether and allow all data, regardless of confidence scores, to proceed directly to downstream systems. This is the most egregious failure, as it completely disregards the system's ability to identify potential errors. It is a direct abdication of responsibility for data quality and would almost certainly lead to significant compliance breaches and operational failures due to the processing of inaccurate data. The professional reasoning process for this situation should involve understanding the system's capabilities, the potential impact of exceptions, and the overarching need for data integrity and auditability. A systematic approach would be to first identify the types of exceptions that can occur, assess their potential impact, and then design an exception handling workflow that balances automation with necessary human intervention, ensuring that all actions are logged for audit purposes. Question 10. The assessment process reveals that a critical data field, mandated for accuracy by industry regulations, is inconsistently captured and validated by the current IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8, one implementation, leading to potential compliance breaches. Option A. Conduct a detailed review of the Taskmaster application's validation rules, data type configurations, and field mapping logic to identify and rectify the specific settings causing the inconsistent capture and validation of the critical data field. Option B. Advise the business to implement a manual data correction process for the affected field after capture, relying on end users to identify and fix discrepancies. Option C. Recommend ignoring the inconsistency for now, assuming that downstream systems will eventually flag and correct any non-compliant data. Option D. Implement a superficial change to the validation rule for the critical field, without a full analysis of its impact on other application functionalities or the underlying data capture process. Correct answer is A. Conduct a detailed review of the Taskmaster application's validation rules, data type configurations, and field mapping logic to identify and rectify the specific settings causing the inconsistent capture and validation of the critical data field. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data capture implementations where the initial design, while functional, may not fully align with evolving business requirements or the nuances of regulatory compliance. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for a working solution with the long-term implications of data integrity, auditability, and adherence to specific industry regulations. A hasty or incomplete approach to addressing these discrepancies can lead to significant downstream issues, including compliance failures, operational inefficiencies, and potential financial penalties. Careful judgment is required to identify the root cause of the discrepancy and implement a solution that is both technically sound and compliant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough reevaluation of the existing Datacap Taskmaster V8.1 application's configuration, specifically focusing on the validation rules and data mapping within the application. This includes examining the data types, expected formats, and the logic applied during the capture and validation phases. By systematically reviewing the application's setup against the identified regulatory requirements for data accuracy and completeness, the implementation team can pinpoint the exact areas where the current configuration is insufficient. Implementing targeted adjustments to validation rules, data type configurations, or even custom logic within Taskmaster ensures that the system enforces compliance at the point of data entry or validation. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of non-compliant data entering downstream systems and demonstrates due diligence in meeting regulatory obligations. This aligns with the principles of building robust and compliant data processing systems, a core tenet of responsible IT implementation. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to simply ignore the discrepancy and proceed with the current configuration, assuming the downstream systems will handle data cleansing. This is professionally unacceptable because it abdicates responsibility for data integrity and compliance. It directly violates the principle of ensuring data accuracy and completeness at the source, which is often a regulatory requirement. This approach creates a significant risk of audit failures and potential penalties if the non-compliant data is discovered. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a quick, ad hoc fix without a comprehensive understanding of the underlying cause or the broader impact on the Taskmaster application. This might involve making superficial changes to validation rules that do not fully address the regulatory nuances or could inadvertently break other functionalities. This is professionally unsound, as it lacks a systematic and documented approach to problem solving, increasing the likelihood of introducing new errors and failing to achieve true compliance. It demonstrates a lack of thoroughness and a disregard for the structured implementation methodologies expected in regulated environments. A third incorrect approach would be to rely solely on manual intervention by operators to correct the data after it has been captured. While manual correction might seem like a solution, it is inefficient, prone to human error, and does not address the systemic issue within the Taskmaster application. From a regulatory perspective, relying on manual overrides for compliance-related data points is often viewed as a weakness in system design and can be a red flag during audits. It fails to leverage the automation capabilities of Taskmaster to enforce compliance proactively. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured problem-solving methodology. This begins with clearly defining the problem and its impact, referencing specific regulatory requirements. Next, they should conduct a thorough root cause analysis of the discrepancy within the Datacap Taskmaster V8.1 application. This involves examining configuration settings, logic, and data flows. Based on the analysis, they should design and implement a targeted solution that addresses the root cause and ensures compliance. Finally, they must thoroughly test the solution and document all changes, providing evidence of compliance and a robust system. This systematic approach ensures that solutions are effective, sustainable, and meet all regulatory and business objectives. Question 11. Market research demonstrates that organizations are increasingly adopting automated document processing solutions to improve efficiency. When implementing IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8.1 for a financial services client, which approach best balances the need for rapid deployment with the critical requirement for data accuracy and regulatory compliance, considering the potential for future audits. Option A. Deploy the system with a basic set of validation rules and rely on manual post-processing checks to identify and correct any data inaccuracies, thereby reducing initial system complexity and implementation time. Option B. Prioritize a phased implementation strategy that includes rigorous testing of all validation rules, comprehensive audit trail logging from inception, and iterative refinement based on early user feedback and simulated audit scenarios. Option C. Focus on achieving the highest possible recognition accuracy rates through extensive OCR tuning, assuming that accurate recognition inherently satisfies most regulatory data integrity requirements. Option D. Implement the core capture and recognition engine with minimal initial validation rules, deferring complex validation and audit trail configuration to a later phase once the system is operational. The correct answer is D. Implement the core capture and recognition engine with minimal initial validation rules, deferring complex validation and audit trail configuration to a later phase once the system is operational. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in implementing document processing solutions like IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1. Balancing the need for efficient data extraction with the imperative to maintain data integrity and comply with evolving regulatory requirements. The professional challenge lies in selecting an approach that not only meets immediate business needs, but also anticipates future compliance obligations and potential audit scrutiny. A hasty or purely cost-driven decision can lead to significant remediation efforts and reputational damage. The correct approach, which involves a phased implementation with robust validation and audit trails, represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of data governance and regulatory compliance. IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1. By its nature, handles sensitive information and regulatory frameworks, such as those governing financial services or healthcare, depending on the specific industry context for which the exam is relevant, mandate accuracy, security, and traceability. A phased approach allows for iterative testing and refinement, ensuring that validation rules are correctly applied and that the system's output is reliable. The emphasis on audit trails directly addresses regulatory requirements for accountability and the ability to reconstruct data processing events. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of non-compliance and facilitates smoother audits. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thorough validation would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the introduction of inaccurate data into critical business processes, potentially violating regulations that require accurate record-keeping. For example, if financial data is misread or misclassified, it could result in regulatory penalties. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on initial cost savings by skipping comprehensive testing of validation rules, ignores the long-term costs associated with data errors and the potential for regulatory fines. This demonstrates a failure to exercise due diligence and a disregard for the principle of fit for purpose in system implementation. Furthermore, neglecting to establish clear audit trails from the outset would be a direct contravention of many data protection and financial regulations, which require the ability to track data lineage and processing activities. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment that considers both operational efficiency and regulatory compliance. This includes understanding the specific industry regulations applicable to the data being processed, identifying potential failure points in the capture process, and designing validation and audit mechanisms accordingly. Prioritizing a solution that offers flexibility for future adjustments and incorporates best practices for data integrity, even if it involves a slightly longer initial implementation timeline, is crucial for long-term success and compliance. Question 12. Regulatory review indicates that the implementation of IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8, one within a financial services organization, must adhere to strict data integrity and audit trail requirements. Which of the following approaches best aligns with these regulatory mandates and industry best practices for system validation? Option A. A phased implementation strategy that includes comprehensive validation of data accuracy, audit trail integrity, and security controls for each deployed module before proceeding to the next phase. Option B. An implementation focused primarily on maximizing document processing throughput, with data accuracy and audit trail validation deferred to a later, unspecified review cycle. Option C. A rapid Big Bang deployment of all Taskmaster modules to achieve immediate operational efficiency, with post-implementation validation conducted only if specific issues arise. Option D, a configuration-driven implementation, where system settings are adjusted based on user feedback during initial deployment, with formal validation documentation created retrospectively. The correct answer is A phased implementation strategy that includes comprehensive validation of data accuracy, audit trail integrity, and security controls for each deployed module before proceeding to the next phase. Explanation: scenario analysis. Implementing IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. One in a regulated environment presents a significant challenge due to the inherent need for data integrity, auditability, and compliance with industry-specific regulations. The scenario requires a careful balance between achieving efficient document processing and adhering to stringent legal and operational requirements. A key challenge is ensuring that the chosen implementation strategy not only meets business objectives, but also satisfies the best practice mandates often implied or explicitly stated within regulatory frameworks, particularly concerning data handling and system validation. The pressure to deliver a functional system quickly can sometimes lead to shortcuts that compromise long-term compliance and data security. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation that prioritizes robust validation and testing at each stage, aligning with the principles of good automated manufacturing practice (GAM), or similar validation methodologies relevant to regulated industries. This includes thorough documentation of all configuration changes, validation of data capture accuracy, verification of audit trails, and confirmation that security controls are functioning as intended. This methodical approach ensures that the system's behavior is predictable, auditable, and compliant with regulatory expectations for data accuracy and integrity. It demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to building a system that can withstand regulatory scrutiny. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing a Big Bang approach without comprehensive validation of each module or workflow is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This method increases the risk of undetected errors, data corruption, and noncompliance, making it difficult to pinpoint the source of issues during an audit. It violates the principle of controlled change and validation inherent in most regulatory frameworks. Focusing solely on achieving high throughput without adequately validating the accuracy of data extraction and classification is another failure. While efficiency is a business goal, it cannot come at the expense of data integrity, which is paramount in regulated environments. This approach risks generating inaccurate reports or making decisions based on flawed data, leading to potential regulatory penalties. Prioritizing speed of deployment over thorough documentation of system configurations and validation results is also a critical failure. Regulatory bodies require clear and complete records to demonstrate compliance. A lack of proper documentation makes it impossible to prove that the system was implemented and validated correctly, leaving the organization vulnerable during audits. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this domain must adopt a risk-based approach to implementation. This involves identifying critical data elements, regulatory requirements, and potential failure points early in the project lifecycle. A structured validation plan, developed in collaboration with compliance and quality assurance teams, is essential. Each configuration change or workflow modification should be treated as a controlled event, subject to rigorous testing and documentation. Regular communication with stakeholders, including compliance officers, is crucial to ensure alignment with regulatory expectations. The decision-making process should always favor a demonstrably compliant and auditable system over one that prioritizes speed or cost at the expense of integrity. Question 13. Governance review demonstrates that the current IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8.1 implementation, critical for processing essential financial documents, is approaching its end-of-life support date. The review highlights potential risks to data integrity and security if the system is not upgraded or replaced. The business unit is concerned about immediate disruption to their daily operations. What is the most appropriate next step to address this situation? Option A. Immediately deploy a new, unproven capture solution that appears to offer similar functionality, prioritizing speed of implementation over thorough testing and validation. Option B. Focus solely on negotiating extended support for the current Datacap Taskmaster V8.1 system without exploring alternative solutions or future upgrade paths. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive evaluation of migration strategies, including assessing alternative solutions, vendor roadmaps, and developing a phased implementation plan with a detailed cost-benefit analysis and risk assessment. Option D. Continue using the existing Datacap Taskmaster V8, one system as is, deferring any upgrade decisions until a critical failure occurs to avoid immediate operational disruption. The correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive evaluation of migration strategies, including assessing alternative solutions, vendor roadmaps, and developing a phased implementation plan with a detailed cost-benefit analysis and risk assessment. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT implementation projects where a critical business process relies on a technology solution that is nearing its end of life. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate operational needs of the business with the long-term risks and costs associated with maintaining outdated technology. The governance review highlights a potential gap in proactive technology lifecycle management, creating pressure to make a decision under duress. The need to ensure business continuity, while also planning for future scalability and security, adds layers of complexity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured, risk-based decision-making process that prioritizes business continuity and future strategic alignment. This aligns with best practices in IT governance and project management, which emphasize thorough analysis, stakeholder engagement, and a phased approach to significant technology changes. Specifically, it reflects the principles of responsible IT investment and risk mitigation. By initiating a formal evaluation of migration options, including cost-benefit analysis and vendor roadmaps, the organization demonstrates due diligence. This proactive stance ensures that any future decision is informed, justifiable, and minimizes disruption to critical business operations. It also addresses potential regulatory compliance concerns related to data integrity and system security that might arise from using unsupported software. Incorrect approaches analysis. Continuing to use the existing Datacap Taskmaster V8, one system without a defined migration plan, despite the governance review's findings, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach ignores the inherent risks of using end-of-life software, which often includes unpatched security vulnerabilities, lack of vendor support, and potential non-compliance with evolving data privacy regulations. It prioritizes short-term operational convenience over long-term stability and security, which is professionally irresponsible. Implementing a new, unproven solution without adequate testing or a phased rollout, driven by the urgency of the situation, is also professionally unacceptable. This approach bypasses essential project management and quality assurance steps, increasing the risk of system failure, data loss, and significant business disruption. It fails to consider the impact on existing workflows and user adoption, potentially leading to greater operational inefficiencies and compliance issues. Focusing solely on cost reduction by delaying any upgrade or migration indefinitely, without considering the associated risks and potential future costs of emergency fixes or data breaches, is a flawed strategy. This approach neglects the total cost of ownership and the potential for catastrophic financial and reputational damage if the system fails or becomes non-compliant. It demonstrates a lack of foresight and a failure to uphold the fiduciary responsibility to protect the organization's assets and reputation. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should employ a structured decision-making framework. This typically involves 1. Problem definition. Clearly articulate the issue, its impact, and the constraints. 2. Information gathering. Collect all relevant data including technical assessments, business impact analyses, vendor roadmaps, and regulatory requirements. 3. Option generation. Brainstorm potential solutions, ranging from immediate workarounds to long-term strategic replacements. 4. Option evaluation. Assess each option against predefined criteria such as cost, risk, feasibility, business alignment, and compliance. This often involves a formal risk assessment and a cost-benefit analysis. 5. Decision-making. Select the option that best balances the identified criteria with a strong emphasis on risk mitigation and strategic alignment. 6. Implementation and monitoring. Develop a detailed plan for implementing the chosen solution and establish metrics to monitor its effectiveness and address any emergent issues. 7. Stakeholder communication. Maintain transparent and consistent communication with all relevant stakeholders throughout the process. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are well-informed, defensible, and aligned with the organization's strategic objectives and regulatory obligations. Question 14. The performance metrics show that the IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8 one implementation is meeting its throughput targets, but a junior developer has flagged a recurring, albeit minor, discrepancy in the captured data for a specific document type. This discrepancy is not currently impacting the overall project timeline or budget, but its root cause is not immediately apparent. What is the most professional course of action? Option A. Acknowledge the developer's concern, instruct them to document the anomaly thoroughly, and schedule a dedicated investigation after the current project phase is complete. Option B. Instruct the developer to ignore the anomaly as it is not impacting performance metrics and could cause unnecessary client concern. Option C. Immediately escalate the issue to the client with a detailed report of the potential discrepancy and a plan for investigation. Option D. Conduct a preliminary investigation to understand the scope and potential impact of the anomaly before communicating with the client. The correct answer is C. Immediately escalate the issue to the client with a detailed report of the potential discrepancy and a plan for investigation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it involves a conflict between achieving project goals and adhering to ethical principles regarding data integrity and client trust. The pressure to deliver a successful implementation of IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8 1, as evidenced by the performance metrics, can create a temptation to overlook or downplay issues that might delay progress or require more resources. The core ethical dilemma lies in deciding whether to report a potential data discrepancy that could impact the accuracy of the captured information, even if it's not immediately obvious or easily quantifiable. The correct approach, which involves thoroughly investigating the reported data anomaly and transparently communicating findings to the client, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the ethical obligation to ensure the integrity and accuracy of the data processed by the system. In the context of IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8 one implementation, this means upholding the system's intended purpose of reliable data capture. Professional ethics, and by extension, any relevant regulatory frameworks governing data handling, though not explicitly detailed for a specific jurisdiction in this prompt. The principle of data accuracy is universal in professional IT implementations, demand that potential data quality issues are addressed proactively. This approach builds trust with the client by demonstrating a commitment to delivering a high-quality, reliable solution. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the anomaly without proper investigation. This could be justified by the desire to meet performance metrics or avoid client concerns. However, this fails to uphold the professional responsibility to ensure data accuracy. If the anomaly is indeed a systemic issue, ignoring it could lead to significant downstream problems for the client, including incorrect business decisions based on flawed data, financial losses, and reputational damage. This would be a direct violation of professional integrity and could have legal or contractual repercussions if the implementation contract stipulated data accuracy standards. Another incorrect approach would be to report the anomaly without a thorough investigation or a clear understanding of its scope and impact. While transparency is important, providing incomplete or unverified information can create unnecessary alarm for the client and may not lead to a constructive resolution. This approach lacks the diligence expected of a professional implementer and could be perceived as an attempt to shift blame or avoid responsibility for finding a solution. It fails to demonstrate the problem-solving skills required for a successful implementation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Acknowledge and document the reported issue. 2. Prioritize investigation based on potential impact and urgency. 3. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis. 4. Quantify the impact of the anomaly if possible. 5. Develop potential solutions or mitigation strategies. 6. Communicate findings and proposed actions clearly and transparently to the client, providing sufficient detail for them to make informed decisions. 7. Implement agreed-upon solutions and verify their effectiveness. This process emphasizes diligence, transparency, and a client-centric focus on delivering a reliable solution. Question 15. Implementation of a new IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8 One solution for processing financial loan applications requires a strategy for handling data validation and exception management. The business objective is to maximize processing speed while ensuring a high degree of data accuracy for downstream systems. The regulatory environment mandates strict data integrity and a comprehensive audit trail for all data modifications. Which of the following approaches best balances these competing requirements and adheres to regulatory expectations for data handling? Option A. Rely solely on automated data extraction and validation rules, with no human intervention for exceptions, to achieve the fastest possible processing times. Any data identified as potentially erroneous by automated rules will be flagged for later review but not corrected immediately. Option B. Prioritize speed by implementing automated data extraction and committing data directly to downstream systems, with a separate, less frequent process to identify and correct errors retrospectively. Option C. Utilize a hybrid approach where only a small, randomly selected percentage of documents undergo human review for exceptions, with the rest being committed directly after automated validation. Option D. Implement a multi-stage validation process where automated rules flag potential errors, and a dedicated team reviews and corrects exceptions before final data commitment. This process will generate a detailed audit log of all automated checks and manual corrections. The correct answer is D. Implement a multi-stage validation process where automated rules flag potential errors, and a dedicated team reviews and corrects exceptions before final data commitment. This process will generate a detailed audit log of all automated checks and manual corrections. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in implementing document capture solutions, balancing the need for efficient data extraction with the regulatory requirement for data integrity and auditability. The professional challenge lies in selecting a method that not only meets business objectives, but also adheres to the strict data handling and retention policies mandated by relevant regulations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen approach does not inadvertently compromise compliance or introduce risks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the integrity and auditability of the captured data. By implementing a robust validation process that includes human review for exceptions and a clear audit trail of all changes, the solution ensures that the data is accurate and that any modifications are traceable. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that emphasize data accuracy, completeness, and the ability to reconstruct events, crucial for compliance and dispute resolution. An incorrect approach that bypasses human review for critical data fields, even for the sake of speed, poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. It risks introducing errors into the captured data without a mechanism for correction, potentially leading to noncompliance with data accuracy requirements. Furthermore, the lack of a clear audit trail for automated corrections or omissions makes it impossible to demonstrate due diligence or to investigate discrepancies, which is a direct violation of auditability requirements. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on automated data extraction without any exception handling or validation mechanism is also professionally unacceptable. This method fails to account for the inherent variability and potential for errors in scanned documents. It can lead to the propagation of incorrect data throughout downstream systems, causing operational issues and potential regulatory breaches if the data is used for critical decision-making or reporting. The absence of a validation step means the system cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the captured information. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment of each implementation option against regulatory requirements. This includes evaluating the potential impact of data inaccuracies, the importance of audit trails, and the need for human oversight in critical data processing steps. Professionals should consult relevant compliance documentation and, if necessary, seek legal or compliance expert advice to ensure the chosen solution meets all legal and ethical obligations. The focus should always be on building a system that is both efficient and demonstrably compliant. Question 16. The assessment process reveals that several potential risks have been identified during the initial planning phase of an IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1. Implementation. These risks range from potential data corruption during batch processing to the possibility of unauthorized access to sensitive documents and the risk of system downtime during peak operational hours. The project team is under pressure to meet a tight go-live deadline. Which of the following is the most appropriate approach to managing these identified risks? Option A. Prioritize risks based on their potential impact and likelihood, developing specific mitigation plans for high-priority risks and contingency plans for others, while continuously monitoring the risk landscape. Option B. Document all identified risks but take no immediate action, as the project timeline is the primary concern and risks can be addressed if they materialize. Option C. Address only the risks that can be immediately resolved with minimal effort and defer all other identified risks to a post-implementation review. Option D. Focus exclusively on technical risks that directly affect system performance, assuming that business and compliance risks will resolve themselves. The correct answer is A. Prioritize risks based on their potential impact and likelihood, developing specific mitigation plans for high-priority risks and contingency plans for others, while continuously monitoring the risk landscape. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in implementing IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1. Balancing the need for robust risk mitigation with the practicalities of project timelines and resource allocation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the implementation team to make informed decisions about which risks are most critical to address, given that not all risks can be eliminated entirely without significant cost or delay. The pressure to deliver a functional system quickly can lead to overlooking or downplaying potential issues. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes risks based on their potential impact and likelihood, aligning with a structured and documented risk management methodology. This ensures that resources are focused on the most significant threats to the project's success, such as data integrity, system availability, and compliance with relevant regulations. Though specific regulations are not detailed here, the principle of compliance is universal in professional practice. A proactive and prioritized approach to risk management is essential for delivering a reliable and secure Datacap solution. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate technical issues without considering the broader business impact or regulatory implications is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to a system that is technically sound in the short term but vulnerable to future problems or non-compliant with essential requirements. Another incorrect approach, such as deferring all identified risks to a later phase without a clear plan for their eventual mitigation, represents a failure to manage risk proactively. This can result in unforeseen problems emerging during or after deployment, leading to costly rework, project delays, and potential breaches of operational or regulatory standards. Ignoring risks due to perceived low likelihood without a proper assessment of potential impact is also a failure, as even low-probability events can have catastrophic consequences. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that involves identifying all potential risks, assessing their likelihood and impact, prioritizing them based on a defined matrix e.g. high, medium, low, developing mitigation strategies for high-priority risks, and establishing a plan for monitoring and reviewing risks throughout the project lifecycle. This systematic approach ensures that risk management is an integral part of the implementation process, rather than an afterthought. Question 17. The assessment process reveals that a recently implemented IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8, one solution, designed to process financial transaction documents, is encountering recurring validation errors for a specific subset of incoming data. While the system is processing the majority of documents successfully, these errors are causing delays and require manual intervention, which was not the intended outcome. Project team is under pressure to resolve this quickly to meet ongoing operational demands. Which of the following actions represents the most appropriate next step to address this situation, considering the need for both operational efficiency and adherence to regulatory compliance for financial data processing in the U.S.? Option A. Instruct the end users to manually correct the data within the Datacap Taskmaster interface for each erroneous document, emphasizing the importance of data accuracy without investigating the root cause of the errors. Option B. Prioritize the development of a new manual data entry interface for the problematic document subset to bypass the Datacap Taskmaster processing and ensure timely data availability. Option C. Immediately update the Datacap Taskmaster application's recognition engine with the latest available patches and updates, assuming that the errors are due to outdated OCR technology. Option D. Conduct a detailed review of the Datacap Taskmaster application's validation rules and associated logic, comparing them against the documented business requirements and relevant U.S. financial data processing regulations to identify any discrepancies or misinterpretations. Correct answer is D. Conduct a detailed review of the Datacap Taskmaster application's validation rules and associated logic, comparing them against the documented business requirements and relevant U.S. financial data processing regulations to identify any discrepancies or misinterpretations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data capture implementations where the initial design, while functional, may not fully align with evolving business needs or regulatory interpretations. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for a working solution with the long-term implications of technical debt and potential compliance gaps. The pressure to deliver quickly can often overshadow the need for thorough validation against the specific regulatory framework governing IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. 1 implementations, which in this context is assumed to be US-based for the purpose of this exam. Careful judgment is required to identify and address these discrepancies without derailing the project or introducing new risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the existing implementation against the documented requirements and the relevant U.S. regulatory framework for data capture and record keeping. This includes verifying that the data validation rules implemented in Datacap Taskmaster accurately reflect the business logic and comply with any applicable U.S. regulations concerning data integrity, retention, and privacy. The process should involve retesting key workflows with a focus on edge cases and exceptions that might have been overlooked during the initial rollout. This ensures that the system not only functions, but also operates within the defined compliance boundaries, representing best professional practice by proactively mitigating risks and ensuring the solution's long-term viability and adherence to legal obligations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to proceed with the assumption that the existing implementation is sufficient simply because it is operational. This fails to acknowledge the potential for subtle but critical deviations from regulatory requirements, which could lead to non-compliance, fines, or reputational damage. Ethically, it represents a failure to uphold professional responsibility to deliver a compliant solution. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately implement significant architectural changes without a thorough impact analysis. This could introduce new vulnerabilities, increase project costs and timelines unnecessarily, and potentially create further compliance issues. It demonstrates a lack of methodical problem-solving and a disregard for the principles of controlled change management, which are often implicitly or explicitly part of regulatory compliance frameworks. A third incorrect approach would be to rely solely on user feedback without cross-referencing it with the underlying regulatory requirements. While user feedback is valuable, it may not always identify compliance gaps. Focusing only on user experience without a regulatory lens risks overlooking critical data integrity or privacy concerns mandated by U.S. law. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured approach to problem solving that prioritizes understanding the problem within its regulatory context. This involves 1. Clearly defining the scope of the issue and its potential impact. 2. Gathering all relevant information, including system logs, user feedback, and regulatory documentation. 3. Analyzing the information against the established compliance framework. 4. Developing and evaluating potential solutions based on their effectiveness, efficiency, and compliance adherence. 5. Implementing the chosen solution with appropriate testing and validation. This methodical process ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed, and the final outcome meets both business and regulatory objectives. Question 18. The efficiency study reveals that a significant bottleneck exists in the document classification stage of the IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8, 1 implementation, leading to delays in downstream processing. Which of the following strategies represents the most effective and compliant approach to address this issue within a U.S. financial services regulatory environment? Option A. Integrate a new, unproven third-party classification solution without comprehensive testing against the existing Datacap workflow and relevant U.S. financial regulations. Option B. Bypass the document classification stage for high-volume document types, relying solely on downstream indexing for data extraction and validation. Option C. Implement a phased enhancement of the document classification engine by refining existing rules and exploring the integration of machine learning models for improved accuracy and dynamic classification. Option D. Increase the number of manual verification stations to process the backlog of unclassified documents without investigating the root cause of the classification errors. The correct answer is C. Implement a phased enhancement of the document classification engine by refining existing rules and exploring the integration of machine learning models for improved accuracy and dynamic classification. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals that a significant bottleneck exists in the document classification stage of the IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8.1 implementation. This bottleneck is impacting overall processing throughput and client satisfaction. The challenge lies in identifying the most effective and compliant method to address this issue without compromising data integrity, security, or regulatory adherence, particularly within the context of U.S. financial regulations that govern data handling and processing. The correct approach involves a phased implementation of intelligent document recognition, IDR, enhancements, specifically focusing on refining the existing classification rules and potentially introducing machine learning models for more dynamic classification. This aligns with best practices by leveraging advanced features within Datacap to improve accuracy and speed, thereby directly addressing the identified bottleneck. This approach is professionally sound because it is data-driven, targets the root cause, and utilizes the capabilities of the implemented technology. It also respects regulatory requirements by ensuring that any changes are thoroughly tested to maintain data accuracy and prevent unauthorized access or disclosure, which are critical under regulations like the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, for financial institutions. An incorrect approach would be to simply increase the number of manual verification stations without investigating the root cause of the classification errors. This is professionally unacceptable because it is a reactive measure that does not solve the underlying problem and incurs higher operational costs. Ethically and regulatorily, this approach could be seen as a failure to implement reasonable security measures and controls, as it doesn't address the systemic issue that might lead to data processing errors or vulnerabilities. Another incorrect approach would be to bypass the classification stage for certain document types to speed up processing, relying solely on downstream indexing. This is a significant regulatory failure. Regulations often mandate specific data capture and validation steps to ensure accuracy and completeness. Bypassing classification, especially without a robust compensating control, could lead to miscategorized data, impacting compliance reporting, audit trails, and data privacy, which are all critical under U.S. data protection laws. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to implement a third-party classification solution without thorough integration testing and validation against the existing Datacap workflow and regulatory requirements. This could introduce unforeseen compatibility issues, security vulnerabilities, or data handling discrepancies that violate compliance mandates. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to ensure that all components of the capture solution meet the stringent requirements of financial data processing. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough root cause analysis of performance issues, followed by an evaluation of solutions that leverage the existing technology's capabilities. Any proposed solution must be assessed against regulatory requirements, data security best practices, and cost-effectiveness. A phased, tested, and documented implementation strategy is crucial to ensure compliance and minimize disruption. Question 19. Investigation of the potential impact of implementing IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8.1 on existing document processing workflows and regulatory compliance within a financial institution requires a structured approach. Which of the following best describes the most professionally sound method for conducting this impact assessment? Option A. A rapid technical evaluation of Datacap Taskmaster V8.1's features and capabilities, focusing primarily on its ability to automate data capture and reduce processing time, with minimal consideration for existing business processes or regulatory mandates. Option B. An assessment based on vendor claims and industry best practices for document capture solutions, without a specific analysis of how these apply to the institution's unique operational environment and regulatory obligations. Option C. Comprehensive review of current document processing workflows, data handling procedures, and relevant regulatory requirements, followed by a detailed analysis of how Datacap Taskmaster V8 1 will alter these aspects, including potential risks, benefits, and necessary adjustments to ensure continued compliance. Option D. A limited impact assessment focusing only on the IT infrastructure changes required for Datacap Taskmaster V8 1. Assuming that business process and regulatory implications will be addressed post-implementation. The correct answer is C. A comprehensive review of current document processing workflows, data handling procedures, and relevant regulatory requirements, followed by a detailed analysis of how Datacap Taskmaster V8 1 will alter these aspects, including potential risks, benefits, and necessary adjustments to ensure continued compliance. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent complexity of integrating a new system like IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8 1 into an existing financial services environment. The core difficulty lies in accurately assessing the potential impact of this new technology on established business processes, data integrity, regulatory compliance, and operational efficiency without introducing unforeseen disruptions or vulnerabilities. A thorough impact assessment is crucial to ensure that the implementation aligns with business objectives and adheres to the stringent regulatory landscape governing financial data handling. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it adopts a systematic and comprehensive methodology. It involves detailed analysis of current processes, identification of potential risks and benefits, and proactive planning for mitigation and optimization. This aligns with the principles of responsible technology adoption, emphasizing due diligence and risk management. Specifically, within the context of financial services, this approach supports adherence to regulations that mandate robust data security, auditability, and business continuity. It ensures that the implementation of Datacap Taskmaster does not inadvertently create compliance gaps, operational weaknesses that could lead to financial penalties or reputational damage. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical aspects of Datacap Taskmaster, neglecting the broader business and regulatory implications, is professionally unacceptable. This failure would violate regulatory requirements that demand a holistic understanding of how technology impacts business operations and data governance. Such an approach risks overlooking critical compliance requirements related to data privacy, retention, and accuracy, potentially leading to significant ethical and legal breaches. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thorough impact assessment is also professionally unsound. This haste can lead to the overlooking of critical dependencies, security vulnerabilities, or integration issues. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of commitment to due diligence and responsible system deployment, which is paramount in regulated industries. This can result in operational failures, data corruption, or security breaches, all of which have severe regulatory consequences. Finally, an approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or assumptions about the impact of Datacap Taskmaster, rather than empirical data and structured analysis, is professionally deficient. This lack of rigor undermines the credibility of the assessment and increases the likelihood of unforeseen negative consequences. It fails to meet the professional standard of evidence-based decision-making, which is essential for navigating complex technological and regulatory environments. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve establishing clear objectives for the impact assessment, defining the scope of the analysis, engaging relevant stakeholders, IT, business units, compliance, legal, utilizing a structured methodology for data gathering and analysis, and documenting findings and recommendations comprehensively. This systematic approach ensures that all potential impacts are considered, risks are identified and mitigated, and the implementation aligns with both business goals and regulatory mandates. Question 20. What factors determine the most appropriate approach for integrating a new departmental document processing requirement into an existing IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8 1 implementation from a stakeholder perspective? Option A. The cost savings projected by the requesting department for their specific process, irrespective of broader enterprise integration or long-term maintenance considerations. Option B. The urgency of the specific department's request and the perceived ease of implementing a quick, standalone solution to address their immediate needs. Option C. The alignment of the new requirement with enterprise-wide governance policies, scalability needs, and overall business objectives, alongside a thorough assessment of its impact on existing workflows and compliance mandates. Option D. The technical expertise available within the requesting department to manage the integration independently, minimizing the need for central IT involvement. Correct answer is C. The alignment of the new requirement with enterprise-wide governance policies, scalability needs, and overall business objectives, alongside a thorough assessment of its impact on existing workflows and compliance mandates. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate needs of a business unit with the long-term strategic goals and compliance requirements of an enterprise-wide document capture solution. The stakeholder perspective is critical here, as different departments will have varying priorities, technical capabilities, and understanding of the broader implications of their choices. A hasty decision driven by a single department's immediate demands could lead to technical debt, integration issues, increased support costs, and potential noncompliance with data handling regulations, which are paramount in any enterprise implementation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a holistic, enterprise-wide view of the IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. One implementation. This involves understanding the diverse needs of all stakeholders, aligning the solution with overarching business objectives, and ensuring adherence to established governance and compliance frameworks. By conducting thorough requirements gathering across all affected departments, evaluating the solution's scalability and maintainability, and ensuring it meets regulatory mandates, e.g., data privacy, retention policies, audit trails, the implementation team builds a robust, future-proof system. This proactive approach minimizes risks, maximizes ROI, and ensures the solution serves the organization effectively and compliantly. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the perceived immediate benefits for one department, without considering the broader impact, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. For instance, bypassing established change control processes or ignoring enterprise architecture guidelines to expedite a departmental request could lead to security vulnerabilities, data integrity issues, or noncompliance with data governance policies. This could result in fines, reputational damage, and operational disruptions. Similarly, selecting a solution component based purely on cost or ease of immediate implementation, without assessing its long-term compatibility, scalability, or adherence to data security standards, is a failure to exercise due diligence. This can lead to costly rework, integration nightmares, and ultimately, a system that fails to meet enterprise-wide requirements or regulatory obligations. The professional reasoning process should involve a structured approach to stakeholder engagement and solution design. This includes 1. Identifying all relevant stakeholders and understanding their unique requirements and constraints. 2. Establishing clear project governance and decision-making processes. 3. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment, including regulatory and compliance risks. 4. Evaluating potential solutions against enterprise standards, scalability, security, and maintainability. 5. Prioritizing requirements based on business value and compliance mandates. 6. Documenting all decisions and their justifications. This systematic process ensures that the IBM Datacap Taskmaster Capture V8. One implementation is not just a technical deployment, but a strategic initiative that delivers sustainable value and maintains regulatory integrity.